If you've ever gone on the Switch's eShop and sorted by price, you'll find out quickly that it is filled to the brim with cheap games and shovelware. I've done this topic a couple times before, but I'm taking a crack at it again. I did it before, and I'll do it again. Today, we're gonna check out the latest games that I've found on the eShop for $1 or less. Real quick, if you like the video, consider subscribing. A lot of the views on this channel come from non-subscribers, so it would really help out a ton, and it's also the best way to keep up if you want to see more. With that out of the way, on to the video. Upon purchasing Adrenaline Rush Miami Drive, I thought I was about to download a simple and cheap racing game. My expectations weren't set very high at all, but I was somehow still let down when I realized the game I just bought wasn't even a racing game, but essentially an endless runner, only in a car. I'm not really sure what the premise is supposed to be. From the looks of it, you're supposed to be some kind of outlaw or something, speeding away from the cops, but in the game, the cops are never actually chasing you. I feel like they quickly came up with a concept and then just abandoned it once it came to the actual game. Now, the game isn't necessarily bad, it just gets really boring really fast, as there's no variety in course assets, and the only thing that really changes in terms of aesthetics is the car you can drive. Basically, what we have here is an auto-driving car game where the object is to complete 3 tasks per level. They range from driving into oncoming traffic unscathed for X amount of time, collecting a certain number of coins, or smashing into various other cars. There's a little bit of variation in these different objectives, but it really doesn't stray very far. They pretty much just make little alterations to each objective. Finishing levels increases your rank, and your rank, plus the coins you collect during each run, can then be used to purchase new vehicles, which then gives you a coin multiplier. There's also items and bonuses you can purchase, but I never really had a reason to buy any since the game isn't really all that difficult. Along with those items are continues that can be purchased if you crash, but I legitimately never found a use for continuing since restarting doesn't penalize you in any way. This got really old really quick, but at least it kind of looks aesthetically pleasing for like the 12 minutes you're gonna want to sink into it. Oh dear. This is bad. I take back what I said about the last game being repetitive. This one makes the car game look like a trip to Six Flags. This is quite literally Mash A, the game. So it's called Deadly Fighter 2, and if this is the sequel, I shudder to think of what its predecessor was like. I could try explaining what this game is about, but I don't think I could possibly put it as eloquently as the game's description on the eShop does, so here goes. Put your kung fu to the ultimate test. Kung fu? The world's largest fighting contest is back. No ranking, no rules, only dead or alive. Who is the strongest fighter on Earth? Plunge into epic combat sequences rendered in astonishingly lifelike details. Every press matters. Yep, every last one of these. So this is sort of a beat 'em up, I guess. A bunch of enemies come after you, you have to tap A to attack them, you're only ever on one screen. Even when you proceed to the next chapter or world, which in this game is different seasons, all the assets in the background are the same except they change the colors of the textures. That's literally it. There's also a block button, but I honestly did not need to use it once. Tapping A sufficed just fine. There's also power-ups you can buy, and the further you get in the game, the more of them become accessible to you, and they do a bunch of different things such as give you a power boost or freeze enemies. As the stages go on, stronger enemy types start being introduced, but they aren't so much stronger as they are just more annoying. They don't really take much more damage, they just kind of become more difficult to land an attack on. I wish I had more to say about this one, but I mean it when I say my entire experience with this game was just me mashing the A button for a half hour. Alright, this next game surprised the hell out of me. It's called Kid Trip, and it's an auto-runner platformer. Now, I'm pretty much used to games like this ranging from terrible to pretty okay, but this one actually got me super engaged, enough to play through the whole thing. Not that it's super long, there's only 20 stages in total with 4 worlds to play through, but this was actually really fun. The mechanics are incredibly simple. There's 4 actions you can do. You can jump, throw rocks at enemies, and hold back on the stick or D-pad to slow your forward momentum a little bit. You can also bounce off enemies and hold the jump button to gain extra height. This is a game of super precisely timed jumps. It starts off not too bad, but this game gets pretty difficult pretty fast. It's much harder and demanded way more of me than I ever expected it to. The art design is pretty charming too. It's simple but effective pixel art that takes more than a few cues from Sonic. The music is also pretty good as well and fits in perfectly. It's actually crazy just how difficult this game gets, but it's never unfair. The final world being dramatically more difficult, and the final stage being one that surprisingly got my heart pounding. I didn't think I would be this entertained by a cheap little eShop game, but this was totally worth the playthrough. All in all, it took me a little over a half hour to complete, and to put into perspective how they clearly intended to make this game no walk in the park, I even got an achievement for completing the game in less than 500 lives. This is quite the enjoyable little gem amongst a sea of shovelware when it comes to perusing the eShop for dirt cheap games. It's definitely worth picking up, and I can't recommend it enough if you're into precision platforming games that require quick reaction time. I am, quite frankly, impressed with how bad this game is. It's a platformer, that much is certain, but I honestly don't even know where to start with this one. I mean, look at it. It looks just about as bad, if not worse, as that game I covered last time, Nicky the Home Alone Golf Ball. If you told me they were running on the same engine, I wouldn't even question it. Everything about how this game controls, looks, and how the levels are designed is bad. You're playing as a mouse named Dongo, who is very clearly, and I'm no zoologist, but that's a f***ing rat. The goal is to, well, I don't know. Not even the game's description tells you. Just know you're a mouse, or rat, or whatever, and you're navigating through really badly designed 2D platforming stages with terrible collision and hitboxes with the goal of getting to the end of each stage, except of course for the final stage, where you literally have to electrocute a cat to beat the game. Now, your only two means of attack are hopping on enemies 3 times, or throwing a limited resource cheese projectile at them also 3 times. At first, I didn't find it useful to use because of the super limited ammo, but then I realized that for whatever reason, dying, respawning, and then getting hit increases your ammo, and there seems to be no cap on it. There's 5 stages, some easier than others, but they're all really terrible slogs with the exception of maybe one. Not only is the collision bad so often that it's hard to tell whether or not you're going to make it to a platform, but most of these stages have incredibly slow and tedious auto-scroll sections, and if you die, you respawn all the way at the beginning of the level and have to redo it. There are checkpoints, but they're typically pretty far into the level and pretty much always show up after one of these really tedious parts. Also, by the way, the second to last stage has a photo of an old lady sitting with her cat, and it's after this that you encounter the final boss, so canonically, you kill a poor old lady's cat. This game is terrible, and I'm not sure whoever's grandma this is even knows she's in the game, so if I were her, I'd probably sue. So, you guys a fan of Platinum games? You like Bayonetta? Well, prepare to be disappointed because this is more like aluminum games. This one is simply titled Roar, with 2 R's and an exclamation point. The idea behind this game is that it's supposed to be a kaiju-inspired brawler, but it really just ends up being a clunky button-mashing slog. The game gives us a little bit of story to start out. You're a dinosaur that's been sleeping for millions of years, and then there's an alien invasion or whatever, who cares? You just need to walk around and tap buttons a bunch of times to defeat waves after waves of enemies. I will say one cool aspect is that you can actually play with multiple people, and there's about a million different outfits to choose from for your character, but that's pretty much where the excitement ends. There's 3 different types of attacks you can use that basically correlate to a light attack, a heavy attack, and a special. There really isn't much of a difference between the light and heavy, and as far as I can tell, I was only ever allowed to use the special once, and I wish I had saved it for the boss. After button mashing for what felt like forever, I made it to what I assume is the end of the stage, because for a while I was thinking that maybe it didn't actually have stages that end and that it was just an endless arcade type of thing, but nope, there was an end-level boss, and it indeed killed me. As much as I'd love to waste even more of my time, I'd rather someone kick me in the shin than play through this stage again. If you like all the button pressing of a Platinum game with none of the fun, this is probably the game for you. Here we have an, unfortunately, pretty crappy little survival horror game, but I feel like if you like this kind of thing, it might be worth checking out, at least for a 30-minute to an hour time waster. I guess what they tried to do here was replicate PS1-era graphics, which I guess in some aspects they kind of did, but something just feels kind of off here. There's a toggle for a VHS filter, but I lasted like 5 minutes before that started to bother my eyes, so I shut it off. There's also a toggle for, this. Pretty surprising this is on the Switch, even if it is essentially 32-bit. I obviously can't show it here, but just imagine if the Tomb Raider code was real. If that and some pixel peen sounds enticing to you, I guess you can toggle that on. Far be it from me to yuck your yum. So I guess this is kind of in the vein of something like Silent Hill. You're a girl who's driving down a road, you hit a deer, and then for whatever reason proceed into darkness on foot. You enter a building and then basically just navigate it, finding keys to open locked doors, avoiding booby traps, and occasionally running away from not Jason Voorhees. He's irritating enough when he decides to randomly show up, but once you're about 2/3 of the way through the game, you'll start running into these humanoid, Baphomet-looking zombie things that you're finally given a weapon to be able to dispatch. But the window to actually chop them down with the axe is so small that unless you have the timing timing down perfectly, you'll end up getting attacked and dying before you're able to kill them. I made it most of the way through this game, but once I encountered a room where I had to first chop down all these enemies just to proceed, then get attacked by 3 of them at once, all without a checkpoint, this 40-minute game was beginning to make me want to rip my hair out. I kept trying and trying, but I really could not keep going. Maybe if I sank more time into it, I'd get through it, but I found myself in one of those situations where I was just spent, and I said, all right, one more time, and if I don't get it this time, I give up. And literally the first enemy of the room killed me. This was more than enough of a sign to stop. This game sucks pretty hard, but I think it might be worth the 59 cents just for the novelty of it. And that's all the games I checked out this time. They mostly all sucked pretty bad, but I will say that Kid Trip game really did surprise me, and I definitely recommend it. There were a few more new ones that have been added to the eShop, but most of them just kinda looked like generic cheap mobile game ports. New games of this nature get added all the time though, so I'm sure I'll be revisiting this topic a few more times in the future. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it and want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there you can check out. And if you want to see everything I upload, subscribe and then tap the bell icon. And if you want to help support the channel, I also have a Patreon right there too.